Maybe Barcelona are getting good at this 1-0 win thing. This is their 7th win by a 1-goal margin in 2023. That's out of 11 games. And I know that football isn't about deserving, and I use other words like suffering. But I felt like Barcelona once again have earned and deserved the victory tonight against Villarreal. Because even against Villarreal, a team that has beaten Barcelona in just one of their last 27 matches, dating back to a 3-game winning streak in 2007 and 2008. But history says that Villarreal are tough, and Barcelona do get the win. And I felt like that's exactly what we just watched. So let's get into it. The 5 headlines from Barcelona's 1-0 win over Villarreal. Headline 1 is total football or total confusion. I got the lineup wrong heading into this game. I thought because he had done well the first time against Villarreal that we would see some Ansu Fati. On top of that, it was Xavi's comments in the press that made me think that there might be a little bit of rotation. But the other argument was the one I think that Xavi went with. And this was certainly a trial run for what we might see against Manchester United. But there might be a little bit of a tweak, because Franck Kessie today played as a double pivot, something we have not yet seen for him at FC Barcelona. And he did it on the left in what has been Frenkie de Jong's normal position, with de Jong being the one to slide over to that pivot spot that Busquets has been occupying. We will talk about Kessie in a second, but as far as the function and how this game worked, we're also going to get to Pedri, of course, but de Jong is the next guy that needs to be spoken about after Pedri. This whole game felt like de Jong was dictated by de Jong. His anticipation was so important, it led to interceptions and recoveries in the opponent's half, and it was key for Barcelona to establish how they would dictate this game, added some chaos and confusion to the match. It was interesting because de Jong moving over to the right meant less positional freedom for him to push forward, and he couldn't drop in between the left center back and the left back, which is what he usually does for build-up, and it also meant that passing on his right meant fewer angles to pass forward, but he did make the most of it. He did show that he could still find that space with a huge run forward near the end of the first half, but it doesn't lead to much. But the 4 midfielders tonight for Barcelona weren't just about the Man U game. It fit this game. With the 4 midfielders, there was a better counter press, which coincided with more overloads in central positions. It caused a lot of problems for Villarreal, which is a team that usually is pretty good in the build-up and strong with their positional attacks. And the only way that Villarreal could get through Barcelona was either kill them on the wings, on the counter, or don't lose the ball. 2 things that they didn't necessarily do in that first half, or at least for the first 70 minutes of the game. Villarreal only had 1 attack through the middle of the field for the entire night. They did not have a plan B for what Barcelona put out. And Kessie was a huge part of this too. He finally, positionally, looked comfortable for the first time since the preseason. There was a moment in that first half where Kessie stood in at left back for Balde for about a 2-minute stretch there, and he didn't look out of place. There was a ton of inverting. When de Jong would go out wide, Koundé would come inside. When Kessie would go out wide, Balde would come inside. Barca's work without the ball was phenomenal tonight. That inverting was very much on purpose. They inverted the fullbacks inside to win the ball and keep control of the game by staying in the opponent's half as much as possible. That was the key to success tonight, was to overload Villarreal, especially in the first half. So they just didn't have the legs in the second half. Hopefully, I guess. Barcelona was also anticipating a second goal. And while he wasn't scoring that second goal, Lewandowski getting wide and helping with the build-up play was also very instructive to the way that Barcelona were creating their numerical advantages against Villarreal. So while at times it did look like Xavi was matching Setien's positional insanity, in fact, Villarreal were playing right into Xavi's game plan in that first half. It's the one that he laid out. 2 is dress rehearsal. Culers do know Quique Setien, speaking of. And you did see the fingerprints of that Barcelona style that he seemed to have. You lose the match, but you do win possession, and you do add some chaos to the game. Villarreal had more possession, 54 to 46%, and Barcelona were outpassed by almost 50 passes in this game, surprisingly enough. But it doesn't mean that Barca were the worst team. And this is also the point where you give some credit to Villarreal, that they were a good test for Barcelona. They played in a 4-4-2, some really young players, exciting players, Yeremy Pino, Alex Benya. Even without Gerard Moreno, Jose Morales has always given Barcelona trouble back to his Levante days, and is the opposite of a young player. And he had his chance at the end of the first half when Pedri made a rare mistake, but Villarreal, very much like in the second, just couldn't capitalize. And while I don't think this was really a good dress rehearsal or dress run for Manchester United, a team that does play in a 4-2-3-1 that is pretty fluid, Manchester United are also a team that have not lost since November 6th, so to say that their form is just a bit better than Villarreal's might be an understatement. Where there is a comparison, though, that I think is a bit fair, is that Villarreal is a team that can thrive in chaos, much like Man U. A nasty challenge may stop play, but both teams have the ability to create something with their quality moments later. So they can play in the mud, they can make it ugly, and they can still strike. And on a different note, but working with that same dress rehearsal headline, Juan Foyth has been much better in other games than this one, and this one could really bias people in a negative way. If Foyth and Pavard are the favorites over Arnau Martinez, I don't really get it. I like Foyth and take him over Pavard, but again, I'll reiterate that I think it's Foyth just because Arnau is out of Barca's price range and Atletico Madrid are going in big on him and have pretty much already locked in that signature. Right back has been an issue for Atletico Madrid since Juan Fran aged out and left in 2019. And even before that, as he slowed down, right back was a concern. But if Villarreal are asking 30 to 35 million for Foyth, which may be the case, was that player that you watched today worth that number? I'm not so sure about that. Unfortunately, though, the fullback market, as I always say, is a bit of a wasteland. More reason probably why the club has renewed the insurance policies of Roberto and Alonso as break glass in case for emergency plans. 3 is wonderful goal. Yeah, it was a rough game for Lewandowski from start to finish. He was able to get that patented La Liga goal where even though he doesn't play his best, he still gets one to put the game away. But this game hung in the balance because Lewandowski didn't bring his best. It was all kind of summed up in the first 5 minutes. That big heavy touch by Lewandowski on Pedri's through ball. Pepe Reina coming off his line and closing down the space after his heavy touch, that being Lewandowski's. Maybe offside too, but it did kind of serve as a precursor for things to come. There is an argument, though, that Lewandowski, as is his class, does find at least one moment every game to kind of make up for it, and he did that with the assist on Pedri's goal. But the credit doesn't just go to Lewandowski. Koundé, as I had mentioned earlier, inverting, coming inside to win the ball. Then it goes Gavi, De Jong, Rafinha, Lewandowski, all one touch to Pedri. You can't draw it up much better. And it wasn't just a goal because, of course, 4 goals and 7 appearances for Pedri. You know, I shout out to the Facebook group for calling this out because I did get a ton of criticism when I had mentioned in the preseason and at the end of last season that while Pedri was excellent last year and excellent heading into this year, we expected he was going to be one of Barcelona's most important players. I have to remember back, but I have either Lewandowski or Pedri as my Barcelona MVP for this season as my preseason projection. And now that he is scoring goals, he has an even bigger argument to take that crown from Lewandowski. And for those who criticize me that he couldn't score goals, well, now that he is, you see how much more complete of a midfielder he is. And now that he is scoring goals, I do push back a little bit. You argued with me that, oh, he did everything he needed to do, but he didn't. Now that he is scoring goals, look at how much more dangerous not just Pedri is, but Barcelona as a whole is. They are winning games because he is getting into clinical positions and completely understands his position on the field. There are moments when he's dropping deep to build up and dictate play, when Kessie would push forward. And then there are moments when he's getting in the box and he's the farthest one forward playing as basically a false 9. He did everything in this game. And because Setien decided to play in what was positional chaos at times, the counterbalance to that Xavi had was the free role that Pedri played. You needed him on the left to close down space on the press. He was there. Again, building up on the right or helping out on the right for Koundé when Koundé would invert. Pedri was there, pushing forward when the numbers allowed to create a 3-2-5 in build-up. Pedri was there, allowing Pedri to make his decisions on his own and again, having Xavi give him the green light to make all those choices. It's what I go back to that makes a quality Barcelona midfielder and what makes a midfield for Barcelona great. It isn't the skill, it isn't the tiki-taka, the pausa, whatever you want to say. It's their decision-making. And Pedri has superior decision-making under Xavi in the role that he's been given, regardless of where he is on the field. And if Pedri keeps playing the way he did today, and De Jong also replicates that form against Manchester United, Barcelona will have the better midfield going into that matchup. 4 is on the back of Araujo, my third man of the match, if you will. As I said, it was Pedri, De Jong, and Araujo. Maybe De Jong and Araujo kind of the same thing. But of course, Barcelona don't come out with a 1-0 win if not for Ronald Araujo. And for Araujo, we just have to start with a little bit of bad news, or maybe kind of good news. After picking up a yellow, Araujo will miss the next match against Cadiz, but I don't think he cared too much. And that might hurt Barcelona in that match, honestly, but for him to serve some kind of yellow suspension, maybe it's best to do it against Cadiz. Either way, against Villarreal, he was immense at the back. Alongside the cool head of Christensen and the skill and speed of Koundé, Barcelona continued to rack up the clean sheets, especially with Ter Stegen being big whenever called upon. But this one, as much as I've given plaudits to Christensen, I thought he was actually a bit too rash, a bit too many fouls from him over the back. And then Koundé positionally caught out, I think, inverting as a fullback. It worked sometimes, it didn't at others in the second half when the chaos on the wings for Villarreal kind of opened up. And Koundé should have been stuck on the wing, but he didn't. He kept coming inside, and that did put Barcelona under a little bit of pressure at times. But Araujo, of the three of them, he was the man today. It wasn't necessarily just a trio. Araujo was the guy standing above all the rest. Just the single moments as well, making up for others' mistakes. Tremendous goal-saving tackle in the 60th minute. Got another one on Yeremy Pino in the 82nd. Then the step late for the offside on the goal that Quique scored. Araujo was on his game, superior in this match. And I'm hoping that without him, that Barcelona are still able to find a way to suffer. Because you can't have Araujo play 90 minutes every single time. But again, ask Pedri, ask Gavi, and De Jong when Busquets is out, well, maybe that's going to happen for everybody. And headline 5 is Xavi's lead. I gave credit to Pedri and De Jong and Araujo, and there are others who deserve some credit too. Balde was really good. I said I maybe seem like I'm criticizing them, but Christensen and Koundé, that's a clean sheet. I don't care what anybody says. Gavi was also really important in this game positionally. Rafinha, not his best, but also not his worst. I think the way that this game was going, Rafinha, very much Lewandowski, could have been more clinical, could have put the game away, but his defensive pressure did not in any way hurt Barcelona in the way that they kept that clean sheet. But the man I have to give, I think, maybe the most credit to today is, of course, Xavi himself. He gets criticized for bad decisions, and he gets criticized when Barca aren't good enough, but I thought he held off a feisty Yellow Submarine with a great plan. He was prepared for the Chukwueze sub and the chaos that would create. And he had his wrinkle of putting Kessie in the double pivot on the left with some license to get forward, the position he regularly played at AC Milan and is most comfortable. If anything, it was the players, again looking at you Lewandowski, that let him down with some poor passing and worse finishing. The one time it did work, that being Barcelona's passing and finishing, they went up 1-0. Even the defensive mistakes today seem more individual than systemic, which does fall on the player more than it does Xavi. There was a heavy touch there, too much on a pass here, and those are things that Xavi can take that iPad and talk to the player individually and say, hey, this is what happened here, let's not do that again, we fix that, and we don't have to blow up the whole system. And the big picture too is that Barcelona survive again, once more, 3 points. In the Liga, that's continuing to be all that truly matters. This is a team at the top of their game that can beat Manchester United, that can do well in the Europa League or the Copa del Rey against Real Madrid, whoever it may be. Barcelona at their peak can do that. In the Liga, it's a little bit of a different mindset. You just have to suffer and get enough points. And this win, while Real Madrid does have Elche, so not saying those are 3 guaranteed points, but Elche would have to play their best game of the season to get anything away from Real Madrid. Still, Real Madrid, for the rest of this season, have a bit of pressure on them because at this moment, they're down by 11 points with that game in hand. There were nervy moments, but because Barcelona had done that being a 1-goal margin of a win, 6 other times in 2023, there still also felt something a little bit comfortable about it. But that will all be put to the test on Thursday night against Manchester United. For what is going to be the biggest clash for Barcelona, you could say El Clasico Spanish Super Cup, and prior to that, the argument may be Atletico Madrid, sure, but we're going to go all the way back to the Champions League. European football is European football. Unlike every other 1-goal win in 2023, if you defend like that against Manchester United that we saw today, they're going to get at least 1 or 2 past you. And Manchester United are also a bit more difficult to break down as well. But we're going to do all that on the podcast this week. Plus, there's going to be a match preview. I don't do too many of those, but it is Europe, so you're going to see a match preview. Make sure you don't miss any of that. And as always, until next time, Forza Barca.